Look, let's get something straight right out of the gate. That voice in your head, the one that tells you you're not ready, that you're going to screw it up, or that you're just not enough, that's not your voice. It's a ghost. It's the echoes of every person who ever took a swing at your self-worth and called it parenting or honesty. Back in 1919, a guy named Franz Kafka wrote a 100-page letter to his father. He was 36 years old, a literal genius, and he spent every word trying to explain how his father's constant criticism had left him paralyzed. His father never even read it. Most of you are living in a house built by a contractor who hated you, and today, we're going to tear the whole thing down and look at the blueprints of what that verbal abuse actually did to your hardware. When you're a kid, your brain doesn't have a firewall. If your dad says you're slow or your mom says you're a burden, you don't analyze it, you introject it. Freud talked about this, but in modern terms, you literally download their voice and save it as your own. You become your own executioner. You don't need them around anymore to feel like trash because you've automated the process. But this isn't just about feelings, it's about anatomy. Martin Teicher at Harvard Medical School did something incredible. He took MRI scans of young adults who had been verbally abused, no physical hits, just words, and the results, they were devastating. Teicher found a massive drop in the integrity of the corpus callosum. That's the bridge between your logical left brain and your emotional right brain. Point blank, constant criticism literally burned the bridge down. It changes your hippocampus, the seat of your memory, and messes with your frontal lobes, the part of you that's supposed to plan a future. Words don't just hurt, they reshape the physical architecture of your skull. Look, wake up. I'm talking to you. Stop scrolling. If you feel like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, it's not because you're anxious. It's because your brain has been rewired for a war zone. Pay attention. Why does it feel so physical? Because to your brain, it is. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger proved it with fMRI scans. She showed that social rejection and verbal attacks activate the exact same part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, as physical pain. When someone tells you you're worthless, your brain processes it the same way as if someone hit your thumb with a hammer. The pain is real. The damage is tangible. And then there's the Fawn Response. Pete Walker, one of the leading experts on complex PTSD, identified this as the fourth survival gear. Most people know fight or flight, but if you grew up under a microscope of criticism, you learned to fawn. You became a professional people pleaser. You learned to scan faces, tone of voice, and micro-expressions like a radar technician in a combat zone. You think you're empathetic. Nah, you're hyper-vigilant. You're just trying to predict the next strike so you can duck. But here's the evolutionary trap. Roy Baumeister famously wrote that bad is stronger than good. It's called the negativity bias. Back in the day, noticing a tiger was more important than noticing a flower. But in a toxic home, this means one insult from a parent carries more weight than 10 I love yous. Your brain is literally built to store the trash and toss the gold. And if you're not careful, you end up in what Martin Seligman calls learned helplessness. You stop trying to escape the electric shock of life because you've been conditioned to believe that no matter what you do, you're gonna get hit anyway. So, how do we fix the machine? How do we recalibrate? Look, I'm talking to you. You are not broken. You are just uncalibrated. The ghost is talking, but you don't have to listen. Let's look at the protocols. First, we use Defusion from ACT therapy. Stop saying, I am stupid. Start saying, I am noticing a thought that I am stupid. It sounds small, but you're creating space between the mechanic and the machine. You're putting the inner critic in a glass box where it can scream all at once, but it can't touch the controls. Give that voice a name. Call it the grumpy old man or the heckler. Strip it of its authority. Second, you need the magic ratio. John Gottman found that for a relationship to survive, you need a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions. If you're recovering from a toxic past, you are in a massive praise deficit. You need to aggressively curate your environment. If your friends or your partner are still hitting you with that 1919 Kafka-style criticism, you're never going to heal. You need a 5-to-1 environment just to get back to baseline. And when you have to deal with the critic, the boss, the relative, the ex, you use the gray rock method. Become as boring as a gray rock. No emotion, no defending yourself, no crying. Just, okay, I hear you. These people feed on your reaction. They're energy vampires, and if you don't give them blood, they'll go find an easier target. Look, there is something called post-traumatic growth. Carol Dweck, the pioneer of the growth mindset, reminds us that the goal isn't to avoid feedback, it's to distinguish between critique of action and critique of identity. You made a mistake is a calibration. You are a mistake is a lie. The fact that you survived that verbal meat grinder means you develop skills most people don't have. You can read a room in seconds. You have a level of resilience that's off the charts. You just need to stop using those wartime skills to sabotage your peacetime life. You've been living in a mental prison where the door has been open the whole time. The mechanic is here, the tools are on the table. It's time to stop being your own executioner and start being your own architect. If you're ready to stop living on autopilot and start rewiring the hardware, stick around. We got a lot of work to do.